One of the biggest debates in the field of psychology is nature versus nurture. Wondering if we are who we are due to predisposed characteristics or based on our upbringing and development.
But which one makes us who we are?
In reality, both of them impact us in a variety of ways. This brings us to the evolutionary perspective of psychology, which is based on natural selection and heredity. This also started the eugenics movement, which applied evolutionary principles in a discriminatory way.
Go.
Pinky and the brain. The brain is made up of two kinds of cells, glial cells and neurons. Glial cells are the glue that hold the brain together, and neurons are the messengers that communicate to carry out the brain's functions. The basic functions of the brain is to absorb, interpret, and act on information. And now to the nervous system. Our nervous systems are made up of the central and peripheral nervous systems. The central nervous system is made up of the brain and spinal cord, while the peripheral encompasses all of the neurons in the body. The nervous system relies on different types of neurons to carry out its functions, including sensory, motor, and interneurons. Sensory neurons transmit information from the body to the brain to interpret, interneurons connect different parts of the brain, and motor neurons carry out brain functions to muscles of the body. The nervous system also comprises the somatic, voluntary, and automatic, involuntary nervous system. The automatic nervous system comprises the sympathetic nervous system, which is our flight or fight response, and the parasympathetic, which slows us down like a parachute does for a skydiver. Neurons typically stay in resting potential, where there is potential energy but information is not being transmitted. The membrane of the neuron is semi-permeable and allows some ions to pass back and forth. Sodium is a powerful ion that can't easily pass through the membrane. Sodium and potassium ions are attracted to negatively charged proteins inside the cell. Neurons firing is an all or nothing response, and this is caused by a large amounts of sodium crossing the membrane and leading to an electrochemical impulse travel down the membrane and transmitting information. The membrane breakdown or depolarization is followed by repolarization and returning to resting potential, while the neuron is returning to its refractory period and cannot fire for some time. Part of the neuron's functions is from neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters are the chemical energy units that occupy synaptic vesicles in their sending neuron. Neurotransmitters can either be excitatory and encourage a neuron towards firing, or be inhibitory and move a neuron away from firing. Ooh. Some examples of excitatory neurotransmitters are norepinephrine, alert arousal, glutamate, MSG in migraines, and substance P, which is related to pain. Inhibitory neurotransmitters include GABA and serotonin, which is involved in mood, hunger, or sleep cycle. Wake up!
Okay.
In addition to these substances, dopamine, which is associated with schizophrenia, learning, movement, attention, emotion, and addiction, like this kid scrolling in his phone, and pleasure. And acetylcholine is involved in memory, learning, muscle action, and Alzheimer's disease.
Endorphins are a special case, mimicking the chemical structure and effects of morphines and act like a neurotransmitter while also being naturally produced in the brain. Endorphins can relieve pain and released by exercise, childbirth, acupuncture, and some sort of electrical stimulation. That's it. The endocrine system works together with neurotransmitters via the pituitary gland, which is also called the master gland. The pituitary glands and the hypothalamus both work together to control sexual aggressive drives like your own Roman orgy. Now we're going to talk about psychoactive drugs known as narcotics.
Hi, I'll be subbing for the teacher while he's away. Now we're going to be talking about drugs. Drugs, also known as narcotics, are compounds that produce altered chemical activity in the brain. There are two types of drugs. Agonists, which mimic the action of the signal by binding to the receptor, and antagonists, which binds to the receptor to deceive them. One kind of drug is sedatives. For example, alcohol. Barbiturates, benzodiazepines, these all decrease anxiety. Consuming this literally causes intoxication, which means your body is intoxicated. Stimulants, on the other hand, increase alertness. Some examples of this are our favorite drug, caffeine. A negative consequence of these drugs is being reliant on them, which becomes addiction. Not using these drugs you're addicted to causes withdrawal, which can cause physical distress. Then there's hallucinogens, which alters perception. Some side effects of these drugs are synesthesia. This is when one sense evokes another sense, like the color yellow or gray equals a circle. Another drug is antipsychotics, which treat people who are dealing with psychosis. Next, we're going to talk
Hello?
about another drug.
You said I'm not good enough?
I didn't say that. Now, let's talk about nerves. Reuptake is the absorption by presynaptic nerve endings of a neuron transmitter that has secreted.
I'm back.
What took you so long?
I don't want to talk about it.
Alright.
Now onto the brain. For the central core, think of a reptile brain. It's the most basic brain in evolution. Its main basic functions like heartbeat and breathing, medulla heartbeat,
Medulla.
and the reticular formation relays information and arousal. That's it. The frontal lobe is for thinking, memory, behavior, and movement. The parietal lobe is for language and touch. The temporal lobe is for hearing and feeling. The cerebellum is for balance and coordination. And then there's also a bell to remember the cerebellum. The occipital lobe is for sight. The brainstem is for breathing, heart rate, and temperature. So as I was saying,
Yeah, get out of here. Alright, I'm subbing in now, so I'm going to be continuing the lesson.
okay, I'll see how it is. I'll be in the bathroom.
There are some important areas of the frontal lobe and the brain in general. You have the Broca's area, which is related to language, and Wernicke's area down in the temporal lobe, which is related to hearing and language. Furthermore, the brain is split into two hemispheres, the major and minor hemispheres, that are connected through a network of glial cells called the corpus callosum. And that ties into split brain research, which happens for people who have thousands of epileptic seizures that need to be able to live, because they're caused by random firings of neurons across the corpus callosum that causes the brain to overload. There are two very important ways of monitoring brain activity, including EEGs and fMRIs. These tools are very helpful when it comes to monitoring brain activity during sleep and contributing to sleep studies. There are 3 stages of sleep. N1, which is very, very light sleep, 5 or 10 minutes after you fall asleep. N2 follows after, and that's still a very light form of sleep, but N3 is a very, very deep sleep, like this guy right here, and that's when you're experiencing those delta waves. REM sleep is called rapid eye movement, and this is where the majority of dreams take place. It's also essential, like, for our cognitive recovery. And if you don't get enough REM sleep, or any REM sleep at all, you can experience what's called REM rebound, which can lead to horrible nightmares and, like, bed terrors. Well, this guy right here may seem to be getting a lot of good sleep. 50% of the population report having a sleeping disorder at some point in their lives. The most common form of this is insomnia, which is the inability to get adequate sleep. A more dangerous version of a sleep disorder is somnambulism or sleepwalking, which can be dangerous if you live in a 2-story house and you might fall down the stairs while you're sleepwalking. And sleep apnea is another kind of sleep disorder where people aren't able to go through the stages of sleep because they keep periodically waking up due to restrictions in breathing, usually caused by being overweight, but it can be caused by other issues too. REM sleep disorder is when someone's kicking and punching violently in their sleep, and while other sleep disorders like insomnia may have treatments available, REM sleep disorder does not, and the only thing you can do with that is manage symptoms. Sense organs gather information from minimum thresholds and send it to the brain so that it can be processed from stimuli. Stimuli is any form of energy that can be detected. An absolute threshold is the minimum amount of stimulus that it takes to be detected 50% of the time by a sense organ. So some of these would include a candle lit from 30 miles away, you'd only be able to detect that 50% of the time, or 1 drop of perfume in a large apartment. The just noticeable difference is the least amount of stimulus necessary for you to detect a difference in stimulus. And there's Weber's law, which is a mathematical formula used to calculate the just noticeable difference. Different sensory systems work together. Sensory interactions help us to complete many tasks, including tasting our food and understanding a conversation.
I'm the teacher. The visual sense is used to detect light, which is traveling in waves. One part of the eye is the cornea, which is the transparent outer covering of the lens and iris that allows light to enter the eye. Another part of the eye is the iris, which is the colored portion of the eye, which is a muscular structure that pulls back or closes in on the opening of the eye. Next part of the eye is the pupil, which is the opening in the iris that has the capacity to change size in order to control the amount of light that enters the eye. All right, moving on.
All right, get here. Don't do that. All right, get out of the way. All right, so the lens is a transparent structure that bends the entering light so it falls directly on the retina. It's very flexible. The retina is a thin piece of tissue in the back of the portion of the eye, over 150 million specialized nerve cells. The rods transcending light into neural impulses sent to the brain. The fovea is a small indentation in the center of the retina, directly opposite to the pupil, which contains 50,000 cones. Bipolar and ganglion cells following rods or cones. Neural impulse then goes to bipolar cells and then to ganglion cells. Blind spot is a small area of the retina with no rods or cones, so no transduction. Color vision, opponent process theory. Eyes' cones are sensitive to two pairs of complementary colors, red-green and blue-yellow, and black and white. Color blindness, 1 of 50 experience color vision problems. Monochromaticism is when a person can't see any color and only sees the world in black and white. The occipital lobe is the optic nerve, leaves the eye and goes to the thalamus, which sends information to the part of the brain that can process what they are seeing. One disorder of this is prosopagnosia. Face blindness, person can see but can't identify who they are seeing. Blind sight is a neurological condition where someone can perceive the location of an object despite being cortically blind. Auditory sense is rhythmic vibrations of air molecules or sound waves. There's frequency, amplitude, and sound localization, which is know where things are based off the sound of them and how loud they are. There's two types of deafness: conduction hearing loss and sensory neural hearing loss. Sensory neural hearing loss has to do with the inner ear hearing loss, while conduction hearing loss is middle ear deafness. The next two senses I'm going to talk about are the smell and taste. Smell olfactory sense is called just above the roof of the mouth, part of the nasal cavity with receptor cells. The taste, or gustation, is small bumps on the tongue. Next are the skin sensations. The four skin sensations are touch, warmth, cold, and pain. The pain gate is the specialized axons used to carry information regarding pain from body to spinal cord and brain. When someone has a limb amputated, they can sometimes get phantom limb sensation, which is when they feel their limb even though it's actually not there. Next is the body's position and movement. Some examples for this is kinesthesis and vestibular sense. Kinesthesis is a sense of position and movement of body parts, and vestibular sense is information about the position placement of one's body in space.
It's so...
Thank you for being in the video. I mean, watching the video.